Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this lunch and learn here. We're going to say thank you to Suzanne is going to be our Chief Executive Officer for MAR, who will monitor the question and answer period. I'm going to introduce our two speakers right now. I'm Judy Oberg, President of Maine Association of Realtors. I work for Oberg Agency in Bridgeton. Someday, if you want to stop by, go ahead. First, I'm going to introduce Peter Coughlin. He's a UMaine grad with a BS in civil engineering and a registered professional engineer for the state of Maine for 48 years and of employment at Maine DOT. Since 1996, Peter has been the director of Maine DOT's Community Services Division and director of Maine Local Roads Center since 1987, which provides assistance and training to across Maine on a wide variety of local roads subjects such as paving, gravel roads, snow, ice control, traffic issues, bridges, culverts, and many more. Peter also manages the local road assistant program, which provides $30 million to all towns and cities for upkeep of their local road systems, manages all urban compact boundaries, and administers the public road inventory and functional classification records of all of Maine's public roads. Then we have John Skelly, who is also a Maine grad with a BS in civil engineering. John also is a Maine licensed professional engineer. He has 13 years of engineering experience with 11 years of public service at the Maine DEP, Maine DOT, Maine EMA, and City of Lewiston. John's experiences in wastewater and stormwater construction and loans, along with an array of infrastructure engineering expertise, serves well in his position as the Maine DOT Southern Region Engineer, Region 1. He oversees and reviews capital and maintenance projects related to transportation functions, roads, site development, safety, permitting, project management, and more as it relates to Maine DOT. Welcome to Peter and John.
Thanks, Judy. I assume everyone can hear me okay, correct? Okay. It's always a pleasure to be part of this group because when we were asked to come down and do this at the conference down in Portland back in October, I think, it was good to have so many people there. And I think just the feeling from when we left the room, a lot of people learned a lot of stuff, especially about the question of who actually maintains this road anyway, because on the disclosure form for anything you sell, you've got to put that on there. And many times I've heard people say it says unknown or I don't know. And that can lead to huge, huge problems at Maine. And one thing I'll mention a little bit later is many of you probably have dealt with properties on discontinued and abandoned roads. And when people buy property up there and they don't know who maintains the road, sometimes that can get really, really, really nasty and violent. Yes, I'll say violent because people can put up gates and it leads to a tremendous amount of mess. And one of the things that we keep bringing up on our commission meetings is it'd be nice to talk to the realtors out there so that they actually had a source to find out where we can see who maintains a road, whether it's the town or the state or whether it's a private or a public easement. So we're going to take you through a real shortened version here of what we did in October. And what I'd like to think is that John and I can finish this by Q1 and then open it up to questions. What we really want to focus on here is showing you the DOT map viewer, which is what we concentrated on down in Portland, because that's how you can find out if you've got a property for sale somewhere. It's easy to find out who maintains the road as long as you know exactly where the address is and the property is. So with that, John is going to talk to us here out of the Scarborough office and talk about some things that relate to signs and right-of-ways and so on. So, John, I'm going to be the one hitting the button here, so just tell me to advance the screen. So here we go.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Pete. Yeah, just to kind of recap what Pete mentioned, this was a 3-hour presentation that we're doing in one. So we cut some stuff out. I think that original presentation might be made available to you or has a little bit more information in it, but this is basically the same thing. Probably going to chat a little bit, kind of go through these a little quicker, just, to get some questions, get like a little round table going, and, um, we can kind of demo map viewer to you guys. So yeah, so to start it off, DOT puts out a little pamphlet, and it looks exactly like this. It is a guide for property owners on state and state aid highways, and it's a really good, quick and dirty type of explanation of what property owners that live on state and state aid highways can actually expect. So it details everything from rights of way, the culverts at the end of their driveway, access management, which is everything related to do with driveways, utilities like underground electric lines coming off the back of utility poles, even installation to help reduce your mailbox from getting taken out by a plow. So it's pretty useful, has contacts all throughout it. I don't think the links here are active, the hyperlinks, but you can always just copy and paste, pretty much the website address and it'll take you right to it. So it's a pretty handy guide. And DOT has a ton of them. So if you ever want some, you can just reach out to the DOT. Next slide, Pete. All right, so get right into right of way. There are a few different types of right of way. What this little diagram basically shows is, a typical 66-foot wide right of way. So if you guys have ever heard the term of a rod road, like a two-rod road, or a three-rod road, or a four-rod road, that basically just really kind of relates to how wide the road actually is. So a rod is 16 and a half feet. It's like an 800-year-old form of measurement. So we kept that around for some reason when we came over here. So a 66-foot right of way is a four-rod road. And if the DOT actually buys the land underneath the roadway, that's basically a fee highway. We own the road underneath. We own the land underneath the road. Typically, we center the road right in the right of way. So you'll sometimes hear of a 33-foot offset from the center line of the road, which in most cases is just the yellow line in the road. And that's kind of what that relates to. There's some other rights of way as well. Pete mentions down here most main roads are easement for highway purposes. So basically, there's been a road there for a while. There's no record of the DOT actually purchasing the road, but we've maintained it for so long that we're allowed to keep the road there. But the land under the road actually is owned by the abutting properties. So, and there's another one as well. It is a route portion road highway. Um, no records exist of there even being an easement through there, but we've had a road through there. Basically, whatever the DOT has been maintaining kind of becomes the right of way. There are some around the southern part of the state that are like that. You could have all three types of rights of way within a mile of each other on a road. Um, so yeah. Next, Pete.
Yeah, let me just comment there too, John, that you can take a given road, and as John just mentioned, the right of way will likely vary in width as you go down that road.
Yep.
Every road in Maine has a different history of when it was started. It could have been an old mud path in town, and then it connected two towns, and then it became wider, and the county commissioners got involved. But don't think that a given road is the same width all the way across. In fact, I've had some town guys tell me, well, I just know all my roads in town are 4 rods wide. And I say to that, no, they're not. You're just not taking the time to bother to go do the research. You can't say that definitively for every town and all its roads being the same.
Sure. Yep, exactly. So, all right. So with rights of way, there are actually restrictions of what you can and can't put in it, and even on the outside of it. So, This is going back to Title 23. This is Section 1401A, where basically it tells you what you can and can't put near the highway. So a lot of times someone will probably buy a house and they want to maximize their yard and they think it might be a good idea to put a shed on their property line or close to it, but there might be a state or state aid highway that um, is right in front of their house. So this kind of really boils all this down to that there's a restriction on buildings and fixtures offset from the road. So you can't put anything that's within the full width of the right of way of any state or state aid highway that's laid out by the state or the county or the town. In addition to that, within 33 feet of the center line of any state or state aid highway, can't do it. Um, there's a caveat to this. If the object existed prior to August of 1949, usually it's allowed to stay. I've run into this, especially kind of down in the coastal areas. You'll have old houses from like sea captains. I think there's a couple in Harpswell that come to mind that the house was actually there before the road. So usually those are okay. And there's the final caveat within 20 feet from the outside edge of any of the paved portion of a state or state aid highway having more than two travel lanes. So someone buys a property or a business wants to go in and put up a sign that's got two lanes in each direction. So that's a four-lane road. You're not allowed to put anything near the road 20 feet from the edge of the pavement. So um, there are some exemptions to this. You can request a waiver that goes all the way up to the commissioner of the DOT, but there has to be certain criteria that you have to meet. Can't be more than a 35-mile-an-hour road. And anything that's a waiver is always temporary. It can always be removed in case the DOT's got to widen the road or, do any sort of traffic safety enhancement. So, Pete, next. Yep. So Pete mentioned that, previously with rights of way, you know, it it can actually vary throughout the side of the road. He's kind of highlighted the 33-foot right of way here. So it's 33 feet from the center line of the road. This is a pretty easy right of way map. There's an
Hmm.
old dashed line right in the middle of where this like rectangular squiggly box is. That's actually where they mapped where the existing road used to be. Um, and then the solid black lines that are kind of parallel to each other, that's actually the new right of way that was taken for the road improvement. So, on average, when the DOT purchases land for road purposes, it's usually a pretty uniform width throughout. But as you can kind of see here, it's 33 feet towards um, towards the right of the screen where that little stream is, and then you'll see this little grayed out area for slope easement. There's some dashed lines from the original right of way, and then there's black lines on the other side of the rights of way. So that's where the right of way is actually a little wider, and the slope easement area. Yeah, that's pretty much for the state being able to maintain that portion of the road so nothing falls into the roadway or you know there's a culvert or something there. So
And I'll show you later in the map viewer demo how to look at a map just like this on any particular road.
yep, yep. All right, signs. There's a handful of slides on signs. There's tons of signs all throughout sides of roads. It doesn't even have to be DOT. It could be towns, could even be private roads, but this, for these purposes, is only DOT roads. So Maine's like one of four states that actually doesn't allow billboards on the side of the road. Um, and this goes all the way back to the mid 60s when Lady Bird Johnson um, was a big advocate of the Highway Beautification Act of 1965. So what it basically did is it limited the size and the spacing and the lighting of billboards. Any junkyards that were in town that were visible from the roads and the highways, you gotta have to mask them or put up a fence. Plantings alongside the roadway, and you're able to it established a fund for recreation services within the right of way. So for this purpose, there's a few signs that we kind of deal with on a daily basis, some more than others. So you have on-premise signs, and where it says Title 23, subsection 1914, that just is where it references the statute of where the limitations of what you can and can't do are. So there's on-premise signs. That's basically on the property of the um, parcel that your client might own or even you might own. There's official business directory signs. I think everyone has seen one of these getting close to a stop sign or, telling you what attraction or what business might be, in the area if you make a right or a left. And then temporary signs. I think these are everyone's favorite around the October, November timeframe every couple of years. So there's restrictions on, how many you can have. A lot of the time they just get distilled down to political uh, messaging, but there's guidance on that too. So next. Yep. So on-premise signs, can't have them more than 1,000 feet from where you're actually trying to do business. So you can't have a sign to tell people to go bowling, half a mile down the road from where it actually is. And the same type of restrictions on how where they can be located kind of apply to that whole 1401A section that we mentioned in the beginning of this. 33 feet of the center line of any public way, within 25 or 20 feet of the outside edge of the paved portion, and can't have them within the full width of the right of way. Size and height restrictions. They're in the statute. I'll also say that certain towns also have their own restrictions. So we usually say that if we allow something that's a certain size, but if the town that you're doing this in doesn't allow it, then we kind of just take the most stringent case. So there's a there's a person at the DOT that does it. So any more information, you can contact her. Her name's Jess. Changeable signs. Can't change any more than 20 minutes, unless municipality adopts an ordinance that says you can. Um, Kind of likewise with a lot of these signs, municipality is responsible for the administration of any of the ordinance for signs. And it's just something that you don't want to have everything change, every so often that distracts people from driving, and it just becomes a distraction. So next. So some prohibited practices or no-nos for signs. This is a utility pole. Um, you don't really want to see this. So, um, none of the signs referenced in the section may be painted or drawn upon a rock or other natural feature. Can't do that for a traffic control sign or device. Can't put a sign up on a utility pole. We can't put any signs up in rotary traffic islands or on trees. Controlled access areas. I think we might have taken some information out from the controlled access, but if you put up a sign in a controlled access area, it'll immediately get taken down. Medians less than 6 feet wide. It just, it's a safety issue and visibility and trying to reduce the amount of distractions. So, all right. All right. It's temporary signs. So I think everyone's seen a lot of these. You can put them in the right of way, but you can only put them in for a max of 12 weeks per calendar year. It's usually 6 weeks on either side of the first half of the year and 6 weeks on the latter half of the year. Um, you- so this one is really important and kind of what really gets people into trouble. Temporary signs can only be placed outside of 30 feet from each other. And they have to not say the same thing. We can't say vote for, X, Y, and Z and have 50 of them plastered on the side of the road within like 200 feet of each other. Like that's no. Can't be more than 4 by 8 feet in size as well. Had to reach out to some property owners for political signs or other business signs, because they wanted to put up a big sign and it obscured people's vision and they couldn't pull out of a driveway safely. So that's also why there's a restriction on size. And more importantly, too, if you put a temporary sign up, you actually got to put the name and address of the person who actually put the sign in the right of way. Because if the DOT takes it out after a certain time, we call them to come pick up their sign. So, the OBDS, official business directories, right? You're allowed to have a max of 6 signs within a 10-mile radius of the business. So if you have a business in town, you'll see a lot of these in the major intersections of um, roads within the town or just on the outside of it. Um, DOT sign actually will install the sign. A lot of times businesses just come and pick them up and put them on poles or posts that are already erected. But you have to apply to the DOT for a permit for these, and you know, costs vary. So great. There's a big one. Had to do with this a couple of times this past summer. Which comes first, building permit or the DOT entrance permit? Um, you know, there's applicability to this. Like I said before, this is really kind of limited to DOT jurisdiction roads, which Pete will kind of get into in the map viewer portion of this, is that um, there's a state law about it, and some towns know about it, some towns don't, and sometimes it gets towns into trouble. And basically, with this Title 30A, Section 4103 states is that you can't issue a building permit unless you actually have a driveway permit for the parcel. So you don't want to sell a piece of land to a client that doesn't have actual legal access to get onto the property. I've seen it where the town assumed that there was a legal access because there was like a little paved 2-foot section right next to the side of the road for when Farmer Fred was haying the road for the last 50 years, and town took that as there's a legal access there. Builder built a house on the road or off on the parcel, tried to sell it, and he couldn't sell it because he didn't have legal access to it. So, um, try to avoid those situations wherever we can. So, um, when in doubt, just never assume that a driveway actually exists, for the use that you want it to, and ask Maine DOT. So, all right. So, a little bit further on driveways and access. Required for any access in the DOT right of way for driveway and entrance permits. The only thing that we can't really waive is that there's criteria in the driveway and entrance rules that you have to be able to see a certain distance down the road, entering and exiting your property. You have to meet that. If you don't meet it, we won't issue a driveway permit. Pete will discuss urban compacts. Certain towns are big enough to kind of act as their own DOT or permitting authority, and they kind of issue the permits. So he'll go a little bit into more of that. Um, if you apply and you get denied, there's a process to actually have us reconsider. Usually is pretty okay, but there's some instances where we just can't do it. Um, if you have a big enough project, it might require a traffic movement permit. So that gets taken care of by the regional traffic engineer. You might be a parcel of land and you want to put a coffee shop on it. Chances are you're drawing too much traffic to it that you might actually have to put in a left turn lane or put in a stoplight or kind of reconfigure the entire intersection. So regardless of jurisdiction on a state or state aid highway, DOT issues those. So, and there's also permits to open the road for utilities and kind of just digging. So highway openings are really kind of centered around excavations within the state right of way. But, you know, we've issued them for traffic control plans, how you're going to detour traffic or manage traffic when you're doing a project. I've issued them over the interstate before too. For utilities, yeah, it's usually always applied for by the utility. So if you have a utility permit in a person's name, that's probably not legitimate. Usually those always get applied for by like a CMP or a local water district or a sewer district or entities like that. So there's different rules and exceptions. I linked, I believe there's a link somewhere in here about a link to those rules. So I think they're about 70 pages each, so it's fun reading. Um, so yeah, and this might be one of the last slides I actually chat about is pavement moratorium. So uh, one of the more important things is that the DOT, we don't really like paving a road and then having it opened up right after we paved. Does It's not great for the structure of the road and doesn't look great. And there's chances are we probably won't go back to pave the road for another 10 years after that. Um, Usually there'll be, stipulations in the highway opening and excavation permits. There's restoration requirements that you have to go X amount of feet beyond how much you cut into the pavement. Towns should be enforcing these if they're in urban compacts, but there's certain lengths of time that you have to wait in order to open up a road after we pave it. So if we kind of just go over with a really light coat, you can cut into it the next day. But if you actually have driven over kind of like a milled pavement or kind of, we've roughened it and then we filled it back in, can't usually do that for 3 years. And if we've actually rebuilt the road, it's 5 years. So if you have clients that are looking to, put services into, support a house or subdivision and we just pave the road, they're either doing moratorium restoration paving or we say you got to wait 5 years. So, all right. And I'm only one of five region engineers. So this is kind of a breakdown of what, the five regions are in the state and who the contacts are for the other region engineers, in case you guys are from all around the state, which we kind of assume you are. So um, we always try to be consistent. So what's happening in, Buxton is happening in Madawaska. So, all right. So I'm done with mine, Pete.
All right, thanks, John.
Yep.
So I'm going to move this along here. Let's talk about classifications of roads. So you can see on the left side here, there's kind of a little balance scale there. And when you think about how a road functions, like think of Route 1 that goes up the coast. That is you can see on the scale there, there's two things, mobility and access, which is land access. What's the function of Route 1 in the big picture? It's as an arterial to get people from one point to another in the shortest time possible. So Route 1's an arterial, Route 2, the interstate, all those big route numbered roads are the arterials. And obviously there's people that live off them, but the primary focus is mobility. The bottom box, the blue, if you take a local street, a neighborhood street, that's primary focus is for land access to houses and farms and businesses and so on, and not for mobility. And in between, you have collector roads. These terms here are federal classifications that have nothing to do with the state of Maine. So when you look at Wyoming and Idaho and Kentucky, they have arterials, collectors, and local roads all through those states too. So the theory here is that people come off a local road, it connects into a collector or an arterial, and maybe puts you out on the interstate to go see a concert in Boston or something. So federal. On the state side, on the right side of the screen here, in Maine law, this is what you hear all the time. A road is a state highway or a state aid or a town way. And this is public, by the way. I'm not talking about private roads yet. So how do you connect the federal and the state? Well, you can see intuitively here when you think about a Route 1 or Route 2 or Route 3, it's an arterial highway, but it's of statewide significance. So it's a state highway, which means it's maintained year round by DOT. At the bottom of the screen here, you take local roads. Those are your town ways in state law, and those are the ones that are full jurisdiction of the town or city. In between, you have collector roads that are either major or minor that are really the state aid roads in Maine. What's the difference between those three state designations? Outside of an urban compact area, the state highway is all DOT. State aid is a mix. It's plowed by the town in the winter, but it's maintained by DOT for the rest of the year. And a townway, all town, all municipal. Let's talk about compact areas, and notice the picture here down in Kennebunk, the little black and white sign. I'm sure all of you have probably driven up the road and seen those little black and white signs and kind of wondered what that meant. Well, as you can see on the left here, this has been in state statute for a long time, actually for 125 years. And any town that's over a 7,500 population, or there's another one I'm not going to get into, is a compact town. And in Maine, we have 51 urban compact towns. So when you're driving in from, say, Cornville to Skowhegan, Skowhegan's a compact, you'll see on the state roads these little black and white signs. What does that mean? As you can see in the bullet there, the maintenance changes and the authority for entrance permits and everything John just talked about switches from the DOT to the town. So in this case, as you see in that sign in Kennebunk, DOT is responsible for everything that's signed backwards. But if someone wants to put a building in past that sign, you go talk to the town. It's also where the plow trucks turn around. The guys doing the striping of the roads, they turn around there. So that it's a jurisdictional change in these 51 towns. So how do you know where these towns are? Well, I'm going to show you how to do that here. But when we get into map viewer here, this is the Gardner area. And if you have the compact area zone turned on, which I think is automatically defaulted to that, you can see in the light shaded area here, the compact area for Gardner. So if you're coming in from the left there off the interstate and you're on the red Route 9 coming in from West Gardner, that's all DOT. It's a state highway. Red is state highway, green is state aid. So some of the things John talked about, the state roads are the reds and the greens. But when you get into the compact line, all of those roads, red, green, and all the local roads in blue are strictly the maintenance responsibility and the permitting authority for that town. So if you lived in Route 9 out toward the interstate, you go to DOT for a permit. If you're inside the compact, you go see the city of Gardner. So in rural areas, as I just said, DOT maintains everything. Inside a compact, the town maintains it all. And they're as the state law talks about, the licensing authority. So it would be the municipal people on the other side of the sign, but DOT on before the sign. So that's important depending on where you're selling property of where you go to get a permit. I do have to mention this because I know you guys have probably sold property on some of these roads where you really didn't know whether it was a state road or a town road. Maybe it's a public easement, maybe it's an old gravel road, maybe there's grass growing up through the middle of it and goes out into the back 40 somewhere. A town can't just get rid of a road and say, we're going to discontinue this and not do it anymore. There's specific steps that are getting more complicated in state law under discontinuance. Discontinuance and abandonment are two separate actions. So discontinuance is a formal thing where a town actually ultimately has to have public hearings. They maybe have to pay damages for loss of value of property, but ultimately there's a town meeting vote and there's a record at the county, and I'm supposed to get a copy here at DOT. Whereas abandonment is something that occurs just because a town hasn't maintained something for years. It could become abandoned where the town didn't actually discontinue it. Going up a particular gravel road like this one in the picture, you don't know what that is. The only way you can tell that, I can tell you that's not a state road. You'd have to go to the town here to see if they had any records of that. The key to this, though, and this is what's huge in Maine, is that who actually owns the road, who has authority on this road? Could the guy next to it put up a gate? Yes, that's possible. And that's where it creates lots and lots of problems in Maine. So as you can see in the next to last bullet here, when a town discontinues a road in today's world, if the Warren article doesn't say anything about the status of it after, in other words, it says to discontinue Elm Street from here to there for 0.54 miles, period. Hopefully, when they write that article, they realize with those words that a public easement is still retained there. And even though the town discontinued it for maintenance, a public easement is there so anybody can drive down that thing and beat the snot out of the road, pulp trucks, ATVs, you name it. And if you live on this thing, or if you sell property on here to someone that doesn't know that, they are going to, as an abutter, be responsible for maintaining this public easement because the town is not doing that anymore. The only way a public easement could be eliminated there is if that Warren article said to see if the town will discontinue Elm Street from 0.45 miles, and the property will revert to the abutters. That's when a public easement will not exist. And at that point, someone could put a gate up at the beginning of that private property. This, I could say more and more about this, but I'm going to move on here. But just, you got to be really, really careful here, because there are so many places in Maine where properties are being sold, and it's not clear if it's a public easement or if it belongs to private property. In some of the public hearings we've heard stories from moms and dads and people going home with groceries, and the guy that owns the first 50 feet of the road puts a gate up and says, sorry, you can't go home anymore. And that creates just ungodly issues in the state of Maine. That's why this Discontinued and Abandoned Roads Commission exists now in the state, which I'm on. Not exactly fun part of my job, but it's something that exists and is a huge issue in Maine. Now, I have to mention this, and yeah, those are real road names in Maine. And in fact, I was in the town that has Katie's Crotch Road the other day, and I said, do you guys still have that sign up? And he said, yeah, actually, we had a warrant article 7 years ago to see if people wanted to pay the $50 every time this thing got stolen. And he said, what we do now is we actually sell, people can buy these signs for $50, and they usually leave the sign alone now so they don't have to deal with vandalism anymore. But all of these signs you see here are in any road in Maine is the responsibility of the town. DOT does none of this right here. You might see memorial highways, but when it comes to standard street name signs, this is solely the responsibility of the addressing officer in that town.
Hey, Pete.
Yeah.
It's Suzanne. Can I interrupt? There's a question about when a road is abandoned by the town, is it the select board or the town at large who will vote on the warrant article to confer it to the abutters?
So I'm going to give you my engineer but not attorney answer. That, I believe, is a town meeting vote.
Thank you.
Now, as you know, I just pulled this out of the law. This is what you're probably all familiar with, that it says in the law that in the disclosure statement, you have to say whether it's a public way or if it's known by the seller. And that's where I remember when I did the talk down in Portland, when I asked that question first, there was a lot of people that just did not know where to go find who maintains the road. And that's what I'm about to show you right here. So you could Google this. You can play with this later. I'm gonna predict that every one of you here in this session today will probably go into this after today's session to find these answers. So you could Google Maine DOT Map Viewer. It's a thing that is used by DOT and all kinds of people in the state of Maine. We're just going to touch on the top of it here. But if you want to see DOT projects that are coming up, if you want to see compact areas, if you want to see addresses, if you want to make a map, if you want to label something, if you want to see the arterial versus state highway classification, it's all on here. So in this presentation, I've got the next 6 slides here are just some of the how-to. I'm not going to bother going through these screens right here because you can take this later. But I'm going to switch over here and go to the map viewer on the website. And this is going to basically answer, how do you find who maintains the road? So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slides here. And I've got it with some links here for things you might want to find later. So I'm going to pop out of this here and go over to the map viewer screen. Do y'all see that right there, Gorham? Judy, shake your head if you do.
We're not. We're seeing contact info.
Oh, maybe I have to. I'm going to drop out of that. Oh, I think I need to go back to my Zoom screen. Hold on just a second. I'm going to hit share. And I'm going to go to hold on just a sec. I got my map viewer up. Oh, right there. Share. Now do you see it?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So
Thank you.
when you pull into map viewer here, if you're in a particular town, you can start up. I'm going to use my cursor here. Can you see that floating around there? Okay. Up here in the
Yes.
top left, you can type in the name of a town. And I typed in Gorham here yesterday, and it will zoom. Well, in fact, let me show you what happens when you type in Gorham. It's going to show up in blue. And that blue is irritating. So what I do is go back up to this black X, blue X, a black X, and the blue will go away. So now when you look at the map here, you can see that there's red lines and green lines and blue lines. Those are all, when you go up to this layers tab up here, you can see there's this jurisdiction turned on. And when you click that, you can see red is state highway, green is state aids, and the blue are the town roads. So when I zoom down here a little bit into Gorham, and because I have my urban compact turned on, you can see where the compact lines are in Gorham. So when you're coming in Route 25 here from the west and you come toward Gorham, you should see one of those black and white signs right about here on the roundabout. So anything inside this zone is the jurisdiction of the town of Gorham. If it's outside this, it's the jurisdiction of the DOT. One thing you can do is you can go to Google Street View and you can go over here and click. I'm going to go to this right here. And you can see the picture will pop up down in the bottom right. And if I blew this up, you'd actually be able to see the compact black and white sign there. Another thing I want to make sure that you, hold on, let me get that out of the way. So on the top right up here under layers, this is a key link right here, and you'll see this map layer tab. Things like right-of-ways, which I'm about to show you, is not normally in this list. This is an A to Z list, and you'll notice down under R, I've got it on my list because I added these to these. And when you do that, you go up here to this add button, and when you hit add, you just type in things like RIGHT or speed for speed limits or whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And it will show up and you hit a plus sign here to add it to your list, and then you hit done. That will stay on your computer for as long as you use that computer. So when you turn on right-of-ways, let me show you what happens here. So I'm going to toggle this back and forth so you can see what gets lit up. So I can go to any of these blue boxes and I can find the right-of-way and the map that was done for that road. So if I go over and say click on Brackett Road here in Gorham, over here on the left, there's a right-of-ways box, and I can see that in 2005, there was a project done there, and if I go to this little wrench, I can go to View Property Plan, and View Plan here, and probably one more. So this will pull up the plans from 2005, and there they are. So kind of as, this one's got a lot of lines on it here, but this one here, let me scroll down a little bit here. This can get real confusing real fast. Maybe I shouldn't have picked Gorham, but bottom line is, here's the right-of-way line solid here on this side, and this side. And somewhere in here, there's probably a dimension that says how far the right-of-way line actually exists. So in some cases, you might find that right-of-way is going through someone's front porch or their front yard or part of their driveway. So it's important to know where those right-of-way lines are. But this is just to show you that these things all exist on this map viewer. Now, I'm going to get back out of this if I can. Whoops. Hold on. The screen is in my way here. Let me back up one. Okay, I'm going to go to a place that's more rural, like, say, Bowden. And I'm going to click on the town. It'll show up in blue. I'll go up to this X and have it disappear in blue. And so the right-of-ways exist here. Let me turn those off and show you the red and the green are the state roads and the blue are the town roads. When I turn on this old county layout, which you probably want to have in your list, let's see what happens here. I'm going to toggle this on and off so you can see what gets lit up. Concentrate on the blue roads here and see which lights up. That tells me that something was laid out there a long time ago by the county. So I'm going to pick, say, this road right down here. And I have no idea what this is going to say because every time I do this, it's different. But if I click on this, over here on the county layout, I can see that this was laid out by Lincoln County in 1846 as a 4-rod wide road as described in volume 7, page 249. So whether Lincoln County still has this online or whether you have to go to Lincoln County, that was laid out as a county layout way long ago. And if nothing's been done to this road since, that layout might still be the case. The road itself may physically not be right centered within the right-of-way, but you can tell, notice how this goes from green and it goes up through here, that some layout was done long time ago. So if you're selling property right here, you might want to know that there was an old county layout and maybe a public right-of-way or a public easement still exists there unless the town has discontinued it. That is going to take some research. So one thing that I would check is whenever you're checking property, if you're selling property right here, you know that it's a blue thing. By the way, I want to say this and make sure people understand this. Anything showing on the map viewer, especially these blue roads, are roads that we know are being maintained year-round by the town. We don't know the legal status of the road. All we care about is what is maintained. So you can see here in Bowden that all these roads here, the town has told us they maintain. So if you're selling property out here somewhere, chances are there may be still something there going through the woods, but the town only maintains to that point right there. Now, when you see a road like this, either in another color, or if you see something that doesn't have a color on it, let's see here. Let me zoom down a little closer. Yeah, like see some of these right here, these don't have any color on them. That tells me that the town does nothing in there. That could be a private subdivision. It could be public easements that the town does not maintain anymore. But we can pretty much tell for sure here that the town does nothing on these roads. So if you're filling out the disclosure statement or even up, on a property right here, let's zoom in into that for a moment. If you're selling property here, then it's the town maintains it. But over here on Avon Drive or Beaver Pond Road or Schellenbarger Road, those are not maintained by the town. So you would put private. We just don't know. All I can tell you for sure is that it's not town maintained. Again, the legal status, we don't know what that is. So that's really, really key here to find the answer to who maintains what. A couple other quick things you can do here is up under imagery. Usually there's something there you can choose to turn on the aerial photography. So you can zoom down here, you can look at things, you can take this toggle bar and you can fade it in, fade it out. I could spend an hour showing you how to use this thing. If you want to find an address, you could click on Get Address and go over here and click on this road right here, and it will tell you what the address is and the lat long. 57 Ward Road is the lat long. You can make pictures of this. Let me zoom down and just point out, if I was selling some property and I wanted to sell this house right here, I could go up here to layers and I could go over to, well, this box is in my way here, but I could stick an arrow and I could put it in here, and then I could hit share. I could hit export. I could call it something, and I want to make a landscape picture, and I want to make a PDF, and I hit export. And then download, and there's my PDF. So you could do this all day if you wanted to, and email this to someone or do whatever you have to do. So one more thing I want to show you here. Again, I could spend another hour showing you this stuff. I'm going to turn off the imagery here. Let's say you were interested if there were many crashes along a particular piece of road. So let's go down here to Topsom and let's zoom in a little bit. And I'm afraid of what this is going to show. But you can actually see the crash history of a particular road by going here to layers. And notice it says here under C, I have crashes 10 years. And when you click on this, you can see whether it was a bear or a deer or a pedestrian or a moose or even a turkey. So when I turn this on, let's see what happens for the last 10 years in Topsom. Each dot here is a separate crash record with a police report. So you could zoom down and you can actually click on any of these things here and you can actually see the police report. In other words, if any of you folks here have been in a crash in the last couple of months, you could find your crash. So if you went to this one in 2022, you could find that this was in Brunswick on Sunday. Oh, it was actually Christmas, 5:51 at night. Someone went off the road, and it tells you everything about who responded, Brunswick PD, and so on and so forth. That's just extra information here. You can also measure on here. If you go to Tools and you wanted to measure something, let me get back to that, but this is in the way. My talking box is in the way here, so I can't get to my measure. But up here in the top right, I can measure, and I can come over here and I can go click, click, and I can measure things all over the place. Another thing, if you wanted to know the particular traffic volume on a particular road, obviously you all drive over those tubes in the road where DOT is counting traffic. We only do that on the state system. So none of the local roads you're going to find traffic counts on. But if we took, say, 201 coming out of Topsom, you could go up here and turn on, and again, you'd have to add this to your list. Actually, I don't have it on here, but I can hit AADT, and I can find the traffic volume by clicking on a particular road. So I know we're cutting it real close here, but I think you got the gist here to at least find out how to find who maintains a road by making sure that you go to the jurisdiction one and making sure that's on. This federal stuff here that I explained in the beginning, you don't really need to know that. What you want to know is who maintains it, which is strictly the jurisdiction button. Okay?
I have a question, Pete.
Yep.
So a couple of things people are asking. Yes, we're recording this webinar. We will be putting it on our website. We will announce in e-news when that is available. Chances are it will not be available for tomorrow's e-news, so probably next week.
Okay.
The question that I have is on a state aid road, if there is an issue and neither town nor DOT will take it on, who do you contact for resolution?
So a state aid road is maintained by DOT during the summer, and the way the law reads is the town. Now I'm talking outside of compact. So if you're outside, like right here, if you're on the Meadow Road in Topsom, it's outside the compact, it's state aid. That means that the town has to plow all the green roads here. When it comes to other things besides plowing and salting and sanding, let's say potholes or a tree comes down, technically that is DOT's responsibility. So state aid roads are really weird in Maine, and I wish they'd kind of go away and belong to one entity or another. But they're DOT's responsibility, but the towns have to plow them. So depending on the issue with the town, if it's not a plowing issue in the winter, it's really a DOT issue. So you'd call the region office for DOT. But if it's a plowing issue, you call the town.
Before you finish, well, it would make you go back to your presentation slides, but you had that good slide at the end with all the contact information. I mean, we will be having this presentation, and I'll ask Pete if we can get his slides and put those up as well. My question is, because I'm totally intrigued by this map viewer, does DOT do map viewer trainings?
Yes.
Or
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, today we're really squeezed here, and I can't show you much here, but the basics. But yeah, every time I go into a town office, in fact, next week I'm going up to Enfield, Burlington area. I'm going to take the time, and every time I show a town office staff what they can do with MapViewer, their reaction is always the same. Whoa, this is awesome. I wish we could, we're going to use this more and more, like code enforcement for assigning addresses or measuring stuff or looking at wetlands. I can do that too. But yeah, I do that all the time.
Okay. I'm trying to think. Somebody asked about real estate signs, and we do have provided guidance. Real estate signs are commercial in nature. They should only be placed on the property that's for sale.
Right.
And so all of those things about temporary signs, those are not commercial in nature. So real estate
Correct.
signs on the property that's for sale only, please, not in the right of way.
Yes.
Does anybody else have any questions? We have just a minute or so more of their time. This has been fascinating. We did do this course in length, 3 hours worth at our convention in October. Hugely wonderful evaluations. And so we did ask if they would, do a condensed version after the first of the year. So thank you all for attending. Any last questions before I turn it back to Judy?
Yeah, and if any of you have realtor groups, Mid-Coast or Kennebec County or whatever, I'm sure John wouldn't mind. I'm sure the region engineers wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind if you want us to come in and do a half an hour just on MapViewer. We're happy to do that because it all goes back to selling property, and there's just so many people getting in trouble these days because they weren't told who maintains the road. And I think I've been emphatic enough here, but that causes massive, massive problems in Maine.
Yeah. I've done this presentation or shown MapViewer to towns and local code enforcement planning, groups. And, like Pete said, I think everyone's reaction is, oh, I didn't know we actually had access to this information. So I think just kind of getting the word out is also important too. So.
I agree.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. And it seems like everybody loves it. They want to do some map viewer training. So we'll have to look into that, right?
All right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
what I'll do, Judy, is I can send you this PowerPoint. It's not that big, but I can send it to you today right after we get done, and then you can do what you want with it.
Yeah, send it to Suzanne.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, Pete and John. I just will have 2 reminders for everybody while they're still on. We have Realtor Rally on March 3rd. It's open. And so please sign up for that. You know how wonderful it is. And we also have an economic forecast with Dr. Lawrence Yoon and Maine State economist scheduled for March 17th. Dr. Lawrence Yoon is amazing, our national economist. And so that's March 17th from 12 to 1. Registration is available for both at our website and via e-news. So that's our commercial break. And again, thank you, folks. Pete and John, you were wonderful.